Thanks everyone for taking the time to attend today. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Where'd you travel in from?
Kansas City.
UN? Nice. So Florida for me, from the United States. We're going to start first with a little thank you. We always want to make sure our sponsors are thanked. Without them, we wouldn't be able to have an event like the Scottish Summit. So thank you very much to our event sponsors, as well as our gold sponsors. Please take the time to stop by and see them in the expo area if you haven't had a chance to say hello and let them know how much you appreciate all that they've done. As I said, I'm Heather Severino. If I have not had a chance to meet you, more likely in an online event than maybe an in-person event, depending on where you're coming from. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I am an MVP for Office Apps and Services. Got my start in OneNote, but now it's all things including Teams. So you'll probably catch on in this session that I'm really passionate about Teams and OneNote, and we'll be talking a little bit about those topics. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor, so you'll find a lot of my courses on LinkedIn that cover some of the things that we're going to have in this course, as well as some other topics that relate to all things Microsoft 365. There's my contact information. I will bring it up towards the end of the session as well. Again, you're welcome to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So I want you to think about this throughout the session. I think this is really important because before we had this thing called the pandemic, I know no one wants to hear about it anymore, but before we had that, we might have been using Microsoft Teams. It was somewhat newer before that. We were working probably with Microsoft 365. And if you're someone who is in a support role or a managing role or helping to get the adoption within your company, probably a good fundamentals understanding of some of these applications. And then we started to get into Teams more, and a lot of people kind of went to working in Teams when they had to work remotely or do that hybrid thing. So I want you to think about, where are you right now? Where's everyone around you right now? They might be thinking, I know Teams, I work in it every day. I hear that about Excel and about other things, right, too? It might just be data entry in Excel. Same thing with Teams. You might be just having text chats. You might be attending or organizing that simple, quick meeting, but are you really getting the most out of it? Are you really getting into that flow of work? And I think that's shifted during the last couple years that we've had here, right? The way that we're working, how we're working, all of the things that are available to us. So I want to take you from adopting to thriving. We may have already adopted Microsoft Teams, we may have adopted Microsoft 365s, but how can we automate a lot of those things? And how can we be the most efficient we can with those? And that's what this session is going to be about. So how can we stay in the flow or get in the flow of that hybrid work, that new way that we're working today? And we'll come back to some things later on. Nessie, we have a little Nessie roadmap for you of what we're going to be covering today. If you're new to Microsoft 365 or you're kind of switching into a different role, and maybe you're not familiar with some of the things that I'm going to be covering, we're going to get you familiar with how apps can help you. We're going to get you familiar with how chatbots can help you, with how connectors can help you, and with how flows can help you. We're not going to do a lot of different flows. I'm going to show you some of the ones that would work really well for different roles, but I will demonstrate a couple of different ones that I think are good to get you started with it. And then we'll get into setting up those customized workspaces. Oh, I see I got a typo there. I'll fix that later for you. When I say setting up your customized workspaces, role-based. I think a lot of what we do in organizations is we consider Microsoft 365 on adopting that or getting it out there and everyone using it. And what do they need to know as far as the fundamentals? But is it more generalized than maybe what would work really well for an HR manager, for a project manager, for a data analyst, right? So there's different ways that we can show that person, if you're the person that's helping to build the champions within those business divisions or units, to kind of set those workspaces up that's going to work best for them. Because sometimes when you're teaching the general things, they're kind of like, I don't know if I'd use that. Or I wouldn't use it in that way, so I don't know how it applies to me. So I'm going to show you some great scenarios of, here's what could work really well for a specific role. So we'll get into that after I demonstrate how some of these things work. This goes back to pre-pandemic. These screenshots are screenshots that I used in a similar talk that I was doing at a Power Up 365 event in Florida. And you might notice in the lower right corner that it's referencing Slack. And you might be going, well, why is she pulling these stats or showing us these screenshots of stats from this report from Slack? Even now, if we think about it, we have all these different apps that companies are using. And this came up in a session I was in yesterday where we're talking about, well, how do I get them to go from Slack to this or from Zoom to this? The reason I like this report is it shows you how app switching can hurt productivity. Mind you, this is from 3 to 4 years ago. So if we think about all of the apps that have come out since then that integrate with Microsoft Teams, that integrate with other Microsoft 365 apps and services, that means even more app switching that we have happening. And that could be up to 30 minutes a day that you are losing in productivity because you're having to switch from Outlook to Excel, or from OneNote to Teams, or whatever app it might be. So if we could get back that 30 minutes a day, that could be really useful. And that's part of what I'm going to show you of what you can do within Microsoft Teams. Notice that we're talking about how many apps per day folks are using. How many apps a day would you say that you use? 10, 15, 20, 30? Yeah, 20, 25? So where would that put you on here as far as that it's hurting your productivity at the really high end of it? Here's another statistic for you, how app usage is on the rise. So when we talk about roles, and we get into showing you some of the things that you can do in Teams about roles, all roles, 76% reported using more apps than 5 years ago. This report's from 3 to 4 years ago. That's probably gone up since then too. So these are just some things to consider as we're thinking about how can I bring stuff in and make Teams that hub for everything that I need to do. We hear that term used widely. Teams is my hub. We probably think, yeah, because I can chat, I can work in my Teams, I can have my meetings, but there's so much more to it than that. All right, so quick terminology review, and then we're going to get into all the fun stuff in the demo. What's an app? We all probably know what an app is. We work in these apps every day. But there are apps that actually integrate that you can use within Teams that are part of Microsoft 365. And I'm going to show you some ways that you can set that up. And a lot of times what we might think about is, how does that app work in a team channel? So I can bring in that PowerPoint file and I can pin it to the top of the channel, right? Or I can have all my files in there. Or I can bring in Excel. But I'd like to show you personally how you can get the most out of Teams as well. So I want you to shift your mindset of, yes, I do need to think about that team collaboration, but how can I also make Teams work really well for the specific personal work that I do in my role? When we're talking about chatbots, there might be some sessions you've attended here or that you're going to attend later today that are about developing chatbots. This one's more about how can I use the chatbots that are already available to me here in Microsoft Teams, whether they are Microsoft or third-party ones that are available. And we'll get into looking at a couple of those. Disclaimer about chatbots, I always like to make sure I include this, especially if you're an administrator. Look into if you want to enable those or not. I am finding that certain organizations are choosing to only enable the Microsoft ones for security reasons after they've done some testing, or not enabling Microsoft or third-party ones, just depending on regulations and different things that they need to adhere to for the type of company that they are. All right. The third one is connectors. This is one that I find is kind of one of those hidden gems in Teams, and it's because of where you go to get it. And you may not know exactly what it does, but instead of you having to post about something every day or once a week, your connectors can do that for you. So you're able to set them up, you're able to set the frequency, what kind of information you want it to pull in, and it's going to post it within a team channel for you. And then finally, a flow. We've probably heard about Power Automate and some of the flows that you can create there. I know we've got some great sessions here during the summit for that as well. I want to show you a couple of different types of flows. One's a pre-built template and something that's already available to you in Microsoft Teams to kind of start it off for somebody that might be new to automating those workflows, how you can help with that as well. All right, so let's get into the demo. So we're going to go out here to Teams. And we're going to start here within the Teams app. So the first thing is, I mentioned to you thinking about how can I personally get the most out of Microsoft Teams? How many of you in here are note takers? Only 4 or 5 of you? And what are you using for your note taking? OneNote? You see a mobile device? What do you use on your mobile device, Sarah? OneNote? Okay. Yeah, so if you're using OneNote or if you're not using OneNote, first thing that I encourage you to do is start checking out the apps that are available in the rail of Microsoft Teams. So if we come on over here, you'll notice these 3 ellipses here. That'll take us to our app menu. And the very first one that you have here is OneNote. And what this does is we're now bringing that directly into Teams. So again, we're thinking about that context switching, the time that it takes us to go from Teams to OneNote or to go from Teams to somewhere else. Here's OneNote. We've brought it directly into Teams. It's now here on the rail. I always recommend that you right-click on it and pin it. Any of the personal apps you're going to work with here, good idea for you to do that. And what this is the default notebook that was set up for my Microsoft 365 account. There's nothing in it yet, but you'll notice if I expand the navigation over here on the left that I can start creating sections for those notes, like if I'm going to have my meeting notes in here. And then I can start adding my pages here and adding the information for that as well. This is the OneNote for the web app that's part of Microsoft 365. So we don't have to leave Teams. We're able to do everything directly right from here without having to go to that other app. Great little note-taking tool, and I'm going to show you something else as it relates to note-taking within a team channel here in a couple minutes as well. Are any of you doing this already? Are you using the personal OneNote in Teams? Yes? Kinda? Still adopting it? Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so that's one of the personal apps that I think that I recommend that you try out. The other thing is if we go back in here to these ellipses, yesterday we had a conversation about, and this was in a session that I attended, it was about Microsoft 365 etiquette, and it was about you shouldn't have a to-do as a message. So if you're sending an email to someone asking that they take care of this, that they review this PowerPoint presentation, it shouldn't necessarily be an email, right? You can get lost if it's not somehow tracked. Same thing goes for if we're sending it as a chat message here within Teams. So the other thing that I recommend is that you pin something here to kind of help you keep track of everything. This is your tasks for by planner and to do. So if I select this one, here again, it's on the rail. I might want to pin it like I did for the other one. And this takes me right into where I have a view of all of my personal tasks, those to-dos that I have that I'm managing with the to-do app, and then the tasks that might be shared with me and other folks that are part of a planner, a plan board that we have in here. So you can see all of the things that are assigned to me here. These are just a couple of the things that I think will semi-automate your workflow if you set those things up in Teams in the personal way that you're working. More of the things that we're going to shift into now are going to be more automated or fully automated in ways that they will help you personally or that will help your team that might be working within a team channel as well. So that's two things I recommend on the rail that can be really useful in helping you with that as far as personal apps go. Now, if we shift our thought and we come on out here to a team, and here within the Teams area, you'll notice that I've got one set up for the Scottish Summit. Let's pretend that we're helping plan a Scottish Summit, the next one that might be happening. In here, you'll notice that I have this planning channel, and there's some stuff that's happening within the posts area, but I want to show you related to note-taking. If we go to the plus sign over here, and we set up a notebook, we'll select OneNote. Something that I think is a common miss. We have notes scattered everywhere, and how can you automate or keep the flow of work happening if you don't have everything in one central spot? Setting a notebook up here and giving it some organization is the best way to do that. So every one of your teams comes with a notebook. You'll notice this one has a notebook already. That's the default notebook. I could set something else up if I wanted to. But if you use this section area, and if I say this is going to be my general notes for anything that takes place within this, and we give that a name, there it is. And then when I save it, and it looks like I already had one for my other channel, so we'll just go with that one for now. But you can pull something into each of your channels. You can even rename it if you need to. Let's go ahead and rename this one. Just call it planning so that it matches up. And then what you're able to do with this is you're able to have named sections that match each of the channels for your team. So it's easier navigation. So if you have a section for planning, you know that that's where all your planning notes are going to be. If you have a section or a channel for budget, you know that that's where all of your stuff is going to be with that as well. So this is a way for you to kind of somewhat automate the note-taking process for everyone that's going to be working in this team because you're giving it structure, you're giving it organization. So that's just something else that can be helpful with getting your app set up. But now we're going to get into more of the automated things as it relates to apps, bots, connectors, and flows. So if we come on over to this chat that's in progress, here's a chat between Deborah and Adele, which is the account that I'm working with. You'll notice there's a message here, and it's back to that. If it's a message, it's not necessarily something trackable that could fall through the cracks. I want a way to make sure that no matter where that person is working from, that they have a way that they can go in and mark this as something that needs to be taken care of. So if I need to make sure I follow up on this PowerPoint presentation and edit it, that I don't forget about it, one of the things that I think is a common little miss in here is that I can create a task from this. and then assign it into my to-do. So back to the task of kind of automating your workflow, I want to make sure that I have it somewhere and I don't forget it. This is a great way for me to say, hey, this is a task. This is something that's important. I'm going to give it a due date. Here's the information that it pulled in from that chat message. It actually has the title of that as well that I could update if I need to, and I'm able to add that task. And now it's in my to-do list for me to follow up on later. But here's another great thing that I want to show you. When I mentioned that we're talking about flows, there's some great featured flows that can help you with this. So if we fully want to automate this, what we're going to want to do is have a way to say, hey, remind me about this later that I need to take care of this work. Before I show you how to do that, though, I want to take you out here to Power Automate. So if you've not worked with Power Automate before, when you go up here to the app launcher, you will find that it's one of the apps if it's part of the subscription that you're working with. And when you go to Power Automate, it'll take you to this home page. And if you take a look at the templates that are available, there are several in here that may apply to the type of work that you're doing or to the roles of the people that you're supporting for the type of work that they're doing. And you'll notice that there's a featured area. There are things that are applied to maybe that remote work or a hybrid type of a work, approvals, which we'll get into here in a little bit. If you're an HR manager or someone that works with a lot of diagrams, maybe even in IT, there's a lot of Visio workflows out here that can help you. One that I've set up today is to follow up on a message. And this kind of goes back to something that was in a session yesterday that came up, and I'm like, oh, that's great, because I'm going to be talking about that. I want to make sure I don't forget about that message. We have so many messages coming into us from so many different places, right? We have Outlook emails coming in. We have chats coming in, whether it's a one-to-one or a group message in Teams. We have conversations happening in channels. But if I want to make sure I'm not going to forget about something and follow up on it, that's a great one to start with. And if you're introducing somebody to Power Automate, if you're in that support role or training role, these are great to start with because they're pre-built templates where when you click on it and set it up, it's signing you into the services that are needed and everything's ready to use. So if I were to select this one, it takes me to this page that shows me all of the apps or services that are needed in order for this automated flow to work. I would be signing into the accounts that are needed for these services, for this flow to work, and then create the flow. I already have it set up. So if you notice over here on the left side, if I go to my flows, here it is. And if I needed to, modify this or stop it or delete it, no longer need it, I can do that from there. So I'm showing you this because we're going to go back over to Teams and take a look at what you're able to do with this once you just set it up. So here we are back at that message. Another way to kind of automate your work or automate the way that you're using Microsoft Teams, if we go to the same message and I say, hey, I want to make sure that I get a reminder to take care of this, if I go up to the ellipses menu for this message, you'll notice in this More Actions area, this follow up on a message. So by setting up that flow, we're activating this to be available wherever we're having our conversations to follow up on it. So let's go ahead and follow up on it. So here we go. We'll give it a date. I want to follow up on it on Monday. I can specify a time. I can even add a note if I'd like, submit it. And now it's going to remind me on Monday at that time that I need to take care of finishing up this PowerPoint presentation. So that is one flow that can help you with that. While we're here in chat, some other things that might help you are bots. I mentioned bots to you earlier. There's a lot of great bots that are here for use. There's Secretary Bot, there is WhoBot, there's some other bots. I encourage you to go over and check these out. If you go down here to your apps area, you'll notice that there's several different apps and workflows and things that you can look for. You can search for pretty much anything in here that you want to set up. So if I start typing secretary, you'll notice that the secretary bot comes up. I'm going to demonstrate something in secretary bot and also in WhoBot, but I do want to let you know if you've not worked with bots before, because it is something that's going to be communicating with you, it's going to be going out and getting data on your behalf and then pulling it back in and presenting it to you. It's going to be answering your questions. It does need your permissions in order to be able to do that. So when you set this up initially, it is going to ask if you're okay with it being able to go and search for that information and to be able to provide that to you. So if you are and you set it up, it will then become available for use. So once you go through that process, it'll end up showing in a few different places. Bots can be used in private chats. They can be used in your team channels. You'll see them surface in a couple of different places for you to communicate with. So here's the secretary bot. Now, when I started this secretary bot and started setting this up, you'll notice some of the process that it takes you through. So it asks, what can I do? Well, I want to schedule a meeting. And when I first started working with the secretary bot, I said, I'm not so sure that this is saving me time if I'm just scheduling a meeting with a couple of my coworkers. Maybe I want to just go through the manual process of doing that in Teams or in Outlook. But here's the part that I thought was really beneficial to this, is that after I said I want to schedule a meeting, it asks me, what kind of meeting do I want to schedule? So do I want to arrange lunch? This is the part that I like. If I want to have a meeting in a specific area and I say arrange lunch, it then asks me to put in an address and it shows me all the restaurants that are in that area. And when it schedules my appointment, it lists those restaurants so that everyone else that's a part of that can kind of chime in on where they want to have this meeting at. So if you're having something out of town, like we're all here in Glasgow, that would be a great way for you to be able to do that. So you can see the correspondence that's happening here of me scheduling the meeting. I say arrange lunch. It's finding the attendees and maybe that I want to have lunch with. It's suggesting people that work around me or that I frequently work on things with. And then I get to tell the address, and then it presents to me, after I give the address, the places that I can have it and the times that I can have it. So it takes you through this whole process. So it's a little bit of time consuming, I think, if you're just scheduling a meeting, but I do see a benefit to it if you're trying to schedule something when you're out of town or around a specific location that you have. So let me show you how it works. So if I say schedule meeting, it's listening. So here's finding the attendees based on the relationships that I see that I have with people in my Microsoft 365 tenant within my company. I want to have a meeting with Isaiah. It's then going to ask, okay, I'll begin how many minutes? 30 minutes. We'll put a reply in. What's the subject? Now, Secretary Bot's going and looking for a common free time. Something else that might be beneficial to you if you always forget to go and look at the schedule assistant to see, hey, what time works best? What time is Isaiah free? Schedule Bot's doing that for you, or Secretary Bot's doing that for you. So it says, okay, which of these times work best for you? I'm going to go with Monday, 8:30 to 9. And now Secretary Bot's going to schedule that meeting for us. And if I want to send multiple invitations or a different time slot for them to pick from, I can send more than one time slot. So think about what that's similar to. Does that remind you of anything else you might use? Yeah. So it's kind of building in some of those other capabilities that we may have with that. So I'm going to just say, no, I'm going to go to next, just that one appointment time. And now it's scheduling the meeting on our behalf. And if I were to go check my calendar, it's there and everything's done. So this is another capability. I know in Teams we still have calendar, we can schedule our meetings, but if you like some of this other functionality of I want to give them more than one option of a time to meet, or I want to send some options of where we can have this lunch meeting or dinner meeting, Secretary Bot is a great one for that. Another bot that can be useful to you is I'm new to the company, or I'm new in this role. I've switched to a different department that I'm working in, and I need to find somebody that can help me with a certain topic. Or I need to find out who works with Deborah, or who does Isaiah report to, right? These are all scenarios that we have likely been in, or if you're in that supporting role that you're helping other people with as well. And I'd like to show you what can be helpful with that. Now, there's two ways that you can get to these types of things. One is if you type a / up in your search command box. So if you've never done that, it's a great little shortcut to show you all of the built-in shortcut capabilities that you have here for changing your presence, for maybe getting to the things that you've saved that you want to go back to later, for looking at things that you've read, all of those types of things. You'll notice there's something in here that says who at the bottom here. So if I type in / who and hit enter, right within the search box, we have the capability to type in a question of who is that person, or who works with that person, or who knows about this topic. So if I say who does Deborah work with? It takes me to a conversation with the Who bot. you can see that I've worked with the Who bot before. And then if I look down here, it does say it needs my permission in order to work. Oh, it might need me to sign in. Again, let's see if it signs me in. There we go. And there's the list of people that Deborah worked with. So maybe Deborah's out of the office, that's who I usually go to about this specific question or topic. Now I know some other people that are on Deborah's team that can help me out with that. I don't know about you. What do you guys do when you need, yes, sir?
So where does it get the information?
Yeah, it's getting it from within Microsoft 365. So yeah, I believe it's Graph that it's using, so it's actually looking at what do you have access to that it can provide to you. So of course, it's not going to provide anything that the account that I have wouldn't have access to, as far as what's been set up. It is AD, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. All right, so this is Who. Now, I got to Who by using the /Who. This is something that you would need to set up. Remember, this is a chat bot, so you do need to give permissions in order for it to be able to correspond and retrieve the data and send that to you. And you would do that through the apps area that I mentioned earlier. The other way that you can correspond with the Who bot is once you set it up, the Who bot, the Secretary bot, any of these bots are going to introduce themselves to you within the chat area. And so if we look over here, you'll notice we have the Who bot and the Secretary bot. And the great thing about these is it helps you with some of the training and adoption right at the get-go. So if you're like, I don't really know what to do with this, I've heard about it, it gives you some information there to help you to know, like, what does this bot do? How do I correspond with this bot? What kind of information can I get? And then you're off and running. So you can get to it right through the private chat or by using the shortcut in the search command area that I mentioned earlier on. That is a couple of bots that I think can be helpful to you. A lot of the apps that you're working with in Teams, and that's why I tend to introduce apps, bots, connectors, and flows all together. A lot of the apps that are part of Microsoft 365 come with bots. They come with connectors. There's other kind of related services that are with those. So if we think about Microsoft Forms, there tends to be more things that you can do with Microsoft Forms, whether it's a messaging extension, if it's some way that it works within a meeting or a chat. And that's the same thing when we're working with some of these bots. You'll find that it is going to add information to a chat or have other capabilities beyond just being an app, whether it has the bot service available or something else. So you notice over here, Power Automate. When I went into Power Automate and I set that flow up earlier to say, hey, I want to have a reminder whenever I have something, remind me about this message, it sent me this card here in this chat area. So you'll have notifications in the lower right corner that will pop up letting you know there's something new happening here, depending on how you've got your notifications set up. And this is going to be the place that you can also go to find out what's been set up. Is this running? Is everything set up properly that's needed? All right, so that's a couple of bots that I think might be helpful to you. Other ones that you may want to check out, the apps and bots, would be Poly. If you are going to be doing some things with your forms and surveys, there are some different capabilities and dashboard capabilities for that versus working with Microsoft Forms. One of the things that I did want to show you with automating some things in regards to meetings is, what do you do ahead of your meeting? How much time do you spend setting things up before you get into that meeting? And I think this is one that tends to be a little bit of a miss. So we're going to go over to the calendar, or one of those things that's more of a hidden gem. We're going to go to next week, and I've got a meeting here. There's the training that we just set up. You'll notice it says TBD because we haven't determined where we're having it at yet. Here's a Microsoft 365 training. We've got lunch. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this 365 training and edit this. This app happens to be Microsoft Forms. What I like about this is once you set a meeting up, I do have the meeting set up, I have invited people. At this point, we can configure this more. So when we think about configuring a workspace, meetings should not be left out. So here we are in the meeting, and we've got these tabs at the top to help us configure this a bit more. But one of the things that's not here, if we go to the plus sign, is to bring in an app, and that is to bring in forms. So if we were all in this session today in an online meeting, one of the things I would do is add a form and set up a couple of questions that I can ask you. So we'll go ahead and save this. And now that I've added this to the meeting, I can start setting up some polls. Now, before I do that, over to the right, you'll notice that we have suggestions. I love these because if you're not sure how you want to set something up or you're not sure about the capabilities that Forms provides, I especially like this one, Word Cloud, because if I set this one up, I can say, hey, where are you all from? Or what's your favorite application in Microsoft 365? Or what's your favorite pastime? Whatever it might be. And then I'm able to present that in the meeting. So by using the Forms app, we can semi-automate that meeting or what we're doing in that meeting by setting these things up ahead of time, and then they're just ready to launch. And you can have as many of these polls set up as you want before you get to that session. So here it says, what are the challenges you met on, training topic, and when we're in the meeting and we're ready, we can launch it right from here. So we'd be able to go back out to this meeting and select this one to launch it. Now if I want to set something new up, we can say new poll, multiple choice, favorite app, give some options. It will even suggest some things to you, so you notice it suggested sway and some other things there as well. Save it, and I've got a couple things ready to go in that meeting. So thinking about workspaces, specific roles, I think that this is a great one to go and configure ahead of your meeting. Check out after you schedule it what you have available at the top for setting up your meeting notes to automate that process. Get all your Forms polls set up here, and the plus sign to do whatever else you want for that meeting. There's lots of different apps and other services available here for you to use. Now back over to our teams. We're going to get into connectors. Connectors is that hidden gem that I mentioned to you earlier, and we're going to do that right here from this planning team. I'm going to show you a couple things in here, and then I'll show you how you can set them up. So you'll notice that there's a couple of things happening in here. I've got some Bing News on anything about Microsoft. I've got an RSS feed that's showing me what the weather is like going on if this is part of the planning of our event. And we're going to go to a different channel to step you through the process of how to set these up. So connectors are in the upper right corner, the 3 dots in the upper right corner here, and we'll get to it right from here. There are many different connectors available to you. I had mentioned that some are Microsoft, some are third party. Depending on how your company has it configured, you may have a different list of results of what's available. RSS feed is if you want to have an RSS feed come in on a certain frequency and auto post within that channel. So instead of you having to go get in the information, paste it in there, and share it with everybody, you can have this set up to do that. Bing News is what topics do you want to get from news and on what frequency, and have it come into the channel. So let's go ahead and configure Bing News. We'll name the digest. Glasgow News. Topic. We'll give it a few different topics. Anything about Glasgow, anything about technology, and then we'll set the frequency of when we want to get this digest delivered. So we'll go with 9:30 a.m. We'll save it. And it's now configuring it. Now, if I had not added this to this team yet, I would have to go through the process of saying, allow this, this connector to work. And yes, I understand what's needed in order for it to go and retrieve that information and post on my behalf. Once you do that, then that's when you go in and configure it, which is what we just did for this. So now I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. You'll notice we have a notification here within the channel. It shows me that it's going to be posting about Glasgow and technology, and tomorrow morning it will start posting with the news about those related topics. So Sarah, I know you're a big fan of Bing, so this is probably something you would like. Yeah. Anybody using something like this already? Any connectors? No? Yes, you are? Yeah. What kind of topics, if you don't mind me asking, are you having it post about?
So I use the RSS connector out to the Microsoft 365 roadmap.
Ah, so it auto-posts whenever there's new things on the roadmap for you? Yeah. That's a brilliant idea. And is that just for like your own internal knowledge, or do you have that set up for a group of people?
It goes into the Champions channel.
Nice.
So all of the Microsoft 365 champions know what's changing.
That's awesome. So if you couldn't hear that, what she was saying is she uses it for anything that's coming up on the Microsoft roadmap, that it automatically posts about that to the champions channel so that everyone that's a champion kind of stays on top of what's coming out. That's a great idea. Love it. Love it.
No, it brings in the text of the message.
That's supposed to knowing part of the email is every time you just have to.
Just to be clear, it's not what's going in the message center. It's
Oh.
on the roadmap.
Okay.
So not what's on the message center, just what's on the roadmap. Got it. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So that's one connector that might be useful to you. I will say that with the other one that I was mentioning, which is RSS feeds that Sarah was just talking about, I'll show you what it looks like when it's set up. I have found certain RSS feeds, and I'm not sure if it's the way that it is set up, the URL for it doesn't seem to play as nice as other URLs do. So I would definitely recommend when you're setting this up, do it in maybe a test type of a team channel that you have before putting it into one of your production ones, because you'll have to go back and do some more cleanup if things aren't quite playing nicely for you. So definitely give that a shot. I also mentioned Microsoft Forms that you can add in here, so we can configure things like surveys and polls and whatnot and bring that in as well. So that is an option that you have also. So that's a couple of the connectors that I think would be really useful to you within your team channels. I want to take you into something else here that I think would be helpful, and then we're going to open up for Q&A soon. So we've been talking about some of the apps that are helpful to you within your chat. We've also been talking about some of the bots that can be useful to you. To show you an instance of, let me get back to where I was once more earlier. 1 second. Here we have our RSS feed. So this just gives you an idea of what it looks like. It is a conversation, so this is something that everybody can respond to or have conversations around. There are other third-party things like Agile Poly and some other ones that might be great to be able to bring information in, or even social media if you want to bring in sentiments and those types of things that you can connect those in as your connectors as well. All right. One other thing that I wanted to show you. Let me go back in here real quick. If we go back over to our Who bot, just type in one more question and see if it will bring it up. You might get things like that. Sometimes it can't find things about who knows about budgets. You may have to be a little more specific on what it can find for you. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate that for you. All right, I want to show you a couple of things that I think might help you bring this all together. So let's think about how can some of these things help a certain job title or a job role. So here we have Nessie. She's no longer the Loch Ness Monster, she's the project manager. So what are some of the things that can be set up to help someone in that type of a role? So work features they commonly work with, their meetings, they're emailing, they're managing a project of some sort, whether it's a small project or a big project. So what are the things that you can help them with configuring? Microsoft Forms, Planner, OneNote for note-taking, Power Automate, websites, and we have one other thing that we're going to get into as it relates to Power Automate here in just a minute. Personal apps that you might want to configure, OneNote, planners, files. Then we get into our chat bots. So these are all the things that if you are a trainer, if you're in a support role, or you're a project manager, you might want to consider setting up in Microsoft Teams to help you get that work way of getting things done more efficiently, saving yourself that 30 minutes or more a day. Polybot, Agile Poly, WhoBot, Forms, Trello. A lot of things that we've been talking about today, some things that we may not be getting into like Azure DevOps or Jira Cloud, just depending on what tools you're using. Flows that would be helpful, so creating a summary daily summary of planner tasks by bucket or sending reminders. So that's one thing to consider. Here's another one. Bessie, she's our Highlands cow. She's our moveless executive assistant. So these are the kinds of things that might be helpful to this type of a person. Probably somebody that has to ask a lot of questions to find information that can help, especially if it's a large organization, by using the secretary bot. Might want to be following up on things or saving emails as attachments within OneDrive instead of having to remember to go ahead and save those things that were sent the old-fashioned way. And then we have our third role-based work, which is bagpipes. That's our instrumental human resources manager. And this is someone who is definitely a multitasker, probably working in SharePoint quite a bit, in different libraries, pages, sites. Probably a lot of planning, a lot of task management, working with lots of different tools, whether they're Microsoft or third party. So you can see all of the different tabs that might be helpful to have set up, whether that's in a personal chat workspace, in a channel workspace, or even on the rail, as we were looking at how we could set up OneNote or the Planner and To-Do app there as well. And then the chat bots that this person might work with, the connectors, Twitter might be one, kind of see what's going on as far as what they're saying about the company or employment or whatever it might be. And then flows that might be helpful as well. And then there's lots of other things that we can consider for this, but I do want to point you to one other flow that is newer and that I think is a great way to introduce anybody to automating their work. And this is something that really doesn't require any setup or minimal setup, and it's called approvals. And this is something you'll find in the apps area if you go to those 3 ellipses within Teams. We're adding this app, so it's a personal app, and this is creating a central hub within a central hub. So if you think about Microsoft Teams as our central hub for all of our communicating and collaborating, approvals, this is your approvals hub for any of the approvals that you might be working with. So you'll notice right now I don't have any approvals set up yet, but if I go to the create or manage templates, we have these different types of templates that you can work with, and this is for maybe a small to medium-sized business or for the types of approvals that you don't already have another technology set up for automating the process of those. This is a way for you to start creating a leave template. This is a preview of what this template looks like. We can see the choices, the dates, the requests. We can go to the next page, and I can make it available within a team. So I'm going to set this approval up to be available within the Scottish Summit team. And now it takes me through these 3 steps of setting it up. So if you're creating these templates, this is the process you would do to set that up. I'm not going to make any changes in this one. I like it the way that it is. But if I wanted to, this should look familiar to you if you're familiar with Microsoft Forms. This is Microsoft Forms. So if you already have familiarity with that, you're able to quickly update these templates. So if I needed to add in a different type of leave or edit out and get rid of one of these types of leaves, we can do that and then move on to the next step. And then once you have this set up, I'm going to say specify approvers, and I can even put in the person that's going to be approving this, and it will start to look that person up. If it finds that person, or that person's not within the team, so it's not going to. So we'll leave that one set to let requesters enter that, and then we'll preview it. So here's what it's going to look like. I'm going to publish it, and now it's available for everybody that's part of that Scottish Summit team to use. So if they add this approvals app into Teams, and we'll go ahead and right-click and pin it to make sure it stays there, they're able to come in here and they're able to view all of the different forms that we have set up for approvals. Those could be approvals for things like speaker selection. It could be approvals for things like budget for swag, or for adding on some extra catering, whatever it could be that has to do with the event. They would be able to use these forms to submit that approval and then have somebody approve it and kind of have it automated there. This is Power Automate. It's just, I think, a really lightweight way to use it. There's not really any setup that's needed other than customizing templates if you don't want to use the ones that are available out of the box. And it's something that can be, you specify who the approver is, or it automatically detects who their manager is to go for approval, multiple people approving it, that all people have to acknowledge or somehow say approve or reject, and it comes back to them. But I think this is a great way to introduce, if you do have small projects, programs, or a company that doesn't have a formal process, to be able to work with approvals to do that. So with that, we've got a few minutes left for questions. I do want to make sure that we thank our sponsors once again, and I'll be around for a few minutes after if there's any questions or resources I can provide to you. So we'll skip this slide for the sake of time. So resources built into Microsoft Teams, quick reminder in the lower left corner, you've got your help button. definitely check it out. There's some great information in there about training, about giving feedback. And with that, thanks again to our sponsors, to our event sponsors, our platinum sponsors, and our gold sponsors, and my company as well for providing the transportation to be here today with all of you. So what questions can I answer for you? Yes, sir.
See with the forms and meetings, if I have a meeting with an external user, can they still fill out the tools and things like
They
that?
can.
Okay, so it's not just internal.
No, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I believe when it was first introduced, it was only internal, and that's a more recent change that it's available there. And it's changed as well, like make sure you're not looking for it at the bottom of the chat panel. You do need to go look for it where it's scheduled within your calendar, open it up there if you need to manage it or when you're ready to launch them as well. Yep. What other questions? Oh, I think there's one here and one here. I'm not sure who was first.
But for approvals, where I've seen it work really, really well is trustees and charities or exec boards, whereby there isn't, the process was send an email and hope people respond in a meaningful way. But some people don't respond in a meaningful way, and therefore it's more directed. The email they receive, it's very clear what they have to do, and the audit trail is saved in there for you. So things like policies and procedures and sign-off and documents, because you can attach them, it gives you something much more tangible, even in a large organisation, that somebody can just own and have the whole audit trail there and not have to pull through their emails and check whether someone did sign it off last week before the other person signed it off this week.
That makes sense. So instead of somebody having to take minutes in the meeting of everything that was said or agreed upon, that you could use, or no?
No, so if you have policies and procedures, you have to sign off outside of the meetings. So you've got a document that needs to be reviewed by an exec board or a trustee board, and it's a very formal process. You give them the documents, and they have to either tick approved, not approved, and make a comment. Then that's then in that audit history of the approvals.
Yeah.
So it gives you that audit trail that you may then be asked for proof that the trustees agreed that this was the thing they were making that decision on that day.
Right.
Prove the exec board definitely said who said which bit on what day. You're not trawling through endless emails to prove that someone did sign that thing off on that day.
That's great. Yeah, and there's not as much setup required as if you were using a form each time you had to do something like that, right?
Yeah, and I've been able to give that to someone's executive assistant, and she was like, this is the best thing ever, and I understand how to find it again.
Yeah.
Whereas forms is another thing to remember where it was.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep. Yeah, I like that. Yes, sir.
So the chat in the I know it's a bit,
Yeah.
my chat window, it's so many conversations. It's out of control to him and that, but I do actually need to be part of conversations with information sale. Is there a tool that can hide them in a certain way that I'm not reading the group?
For just hiding certain chats?
Yeah, so I know you can individually do it, but they come through in such a way or not. So when I'm invited to group meetings that are going to come away, for example, it sets up for the 3 meetings that are there, it sets up 3 different conversations.
Yeah.
And you're trying to keep up with, leave that one, leave that one, write that one, leave that one, write that one, but we're doing so we automate that and just...
Yeah. So what you're saying, what you're describing, what he's asking about is he has so many chat conversations in this list, especially whenever there's new meetings that are coming up, that it starts that new chat for that meeting instance. And the process right now that you're using is this hide. Yeah. And is there a different way that you can hide more of them at once? Or do all of them? I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that there is something.
Try filter at the top.
It's a good point.
Filter, by the way, Heather, your slide's still up, not your
Oh.
screen. You can, it's relatively new, but you can filter your chat for unread messages, the meeting chat, and the chats. So if you go up to the top there, you've got the filters, click back on the dot, you've got different options there, so you can filter it down. It's not, I know it's not the complete answer, but it might help.
Yeah. And then you can also use search if there's something specific that you're looking for that happens to be in one of those chats. So if I was saying, hey, I need to find everything that I've talked about training recently, or everything that has to do with the executive board or whatever it might be, then it will show you all, but you can filter it down to just your messages. And then you've got a lot of filtering capabilities here at the top to help you with refining that too. So if it's beyond the 4 filter types you have with that, search is another great option. I wish there were more. That's a great thing for you to provide in feedback for teams. If you're not, have you provided anything in there for people to upvote?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the suggest a feature takes you out to what used to be user voice, which is the new feedback portal. But I would check there, search there, and see what people have said for the scenario that you're saying, and then upvote it. If not, suggest it there for others to upvote. Any other questions I can answer for you? Yes, sir.
Governance, based on the experience and kind of an IT operations role which I was playing, there is a lot of afraid, and a lot of governments are blocking deploying the automations in the cloud platform to the users. How to make sure that the governance is in place before we enable them.
Yeah, I'm not the person that's on the admin side of it. I'm more on the end user training adoption of it. But I do know there's companies that will have someone come in, whether it's internal or someone else come in and test everything, and then make the determination on what they need to disable or enable and configure everything properly for that. There are some great resources if you go to support.microsoft.com as well, related to app spots, connectors, and flows as far as what you're asking about from that admin perspective. But if anyone else has anything to share on that.
So the other thing is have a look at the Centre of Excellence templates for managing compliance across the whole of Power Platform. There's a lot of really good guidance and reporting controls in there.
Great. Thank you.
That's a good place to start anyway.
Thanks, Sarah. Great. Well, thanks for attending today. I look forward to seeing you at other sessions.